to Survive and Advance on the Gruely True Sports Network. Survive and Advance is brought to you by Replenishing Care Technologies, the future of sports medicine. To find out more about them and all their products, go to thegruelytruth.net, click on the banner at the top of the page. I am your co-host for Survive and Advance, Mike Goodpaster. Right now, I'd like to welcome my other co-host, 1981 national champion with the Indiana Hoosiers, Steve Risley. How you doing, Steve?
Doing fine this morning, Mike. How you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. My team won. Your team, once again, should have won but didn't. But you got to be happy with how the Colts have played this year compared to what you thought they would be.
Yeah, they're there. I'm not disappointed with the decision they made at the end of the game. I mean, where they had to lose to go for it, and just didn't complete the play. But they're not a playoff contending team this year. They're not a team who's going to make the playoffs or make any impact other than in the draft. And I think that's probably the way they ought to be working on and heading to at this point in time. Andrew Luck looked good, throwing for over 400 yards and looked strong. Good zip on the ball. T.Y. Hilton was looking good until he got hurt. But anyway, I don't think the Colts are the team we really want to be talking about after Week 4 in the NFL.
We're going to talk about it a little bit just because of Reich's decision. Also, every Monday from the FF Faceoff, we have Anthony Servino. How you doing, Anthony?
I'm doing great, Mike. Cowboys coming off of a great win against the Lions, but I think they can improve off of that. But overall, I'm doing awesome this morning.
All right, so we're going to start off. We're going to talk about the games yesterday that were decided by coaching decisions where both coaches decided to go for the win. First off, we're going to start off, Anthony, with Frank Reich of the Indianapolis Colts, who is catching all kind of hell today. What did you think of Reich's call at the end of the game yesterday?
I thought the call was absurd and questionable. I didn't agree with it whatsoever. And, I think Andrew Luck is going to be the bigger focal point in the end if the Colts have a losing season. And that's not fair to him. Because Frank Reich, I don't like some of his decisions this year. And this is a Colts team that is in a competitive AFC South. And anytime you have Andrew Luck as your quarterback, you're in contention for a playoff spot. So, yeah, they cost him a win.
All right, so how did it cost them a win? Because they had no
or at
chance
least a
to
tie.
win. Yeah, but who gives a shit? It's a tie. A tie is a loss. If you look at Pittsburgh right now, they tied Cleveland. They're both pretty much 2 games behind the Bengals and the Ravens right now because of that tie. It's a game and a half. So why would you not want your team, why would you not want a coach that wants to win the game instead of just going to be happy to lose the game? And a tie is a loss. My dad told me a long time ago, after a tie game I played in, you lost. You either win or you lose. And the Indianapolis Colts with a win would have been 2-2. They'd have been right in the thick of it. With a tie, they're 1-1. There's really no difference there, Anthony.
You don't think that half a game or whatever you lose by actual taking the loss doesn't make a difference at the end when it comes to, if a team is on the playoff bubble or in?
Well, if they're 8-7-1 and the team that makes the playoffs is 9-7, it definitely made a difference because if you win that game, you're 9-7. And in the end, I don't care. I think ties are complete crap. I mean, they have no place in the NFL.
I agree with that.
You got to play to win the game. So, are you against Mike Vrabel?
Am I against Vrabel?
Yeah, was that a bad call?
No, I'm actually getting more and more on the Mike Vrabel bandwagon. Ever since last week's show when you touted him as a possible Coach of the Year candidate, I actually watched that Titans game a little bit more, and I'm starting to buy in.
But he went for the win. Wouldn't it have been safer just to kick the field goal? Why would you risk the game there? Shouldn't he take the tie? I mean, I don't understand how it's right for Vrabel to do it, but it's wrong for Reich. I do understand because hindsight's 20/20. One of them's worked and one of them didn't. But I'm telling you this, the NFL that we live in, over half the coaches, and probably 80% of the coaches are going to take the tie because they're afraid to lose their job. And last year, we saw Doug Peterson in the Super Bowl take all kind of chances to beat the New England Patriots. And in the end, I think to be a successful coach, you can't be afraid to lose the game. And I don't think Reich or Vrabel were afraid to lose the game. And when I look at it, Steve, that's why I like both of these coaches now.
Yeah, I think the Colts really were in a situation where, looking at that, I mean, Tennessee's up their game. Jacksonville is strong. I'd say what you want to, but Houston looked organized yesterday against the Colts. They looked like they finally were playing together as a team. I think that not going for it, the Colts get 1-3, which is what they are. They're pretty well out of it. I mean, they needed to have that win. That's a game that they were expected to win to try and get to 8-8 to have any kind of a shot at a playoff contention. And if they lose against the Houston, which hadn't won a game yet, at home, then you pretty well can write the season off anyway. So I don't, as a diehard Colts fan, growing up in Indianapolis and loving the Colts and they're my team, I'm not upset with the attempt to go for it. I kind of really like it. At least somebody had some kahunas to go for it and try and get a win out of it, as you said, not just try and take the tie and walk away from it, because I agree with you, a tie really doesn't do any good. It's like I belong to a pool and I bet and I picked every winning team right, but I lost the spread by half a point half the time. The spread, they lost by 3. The spread was 3.5. So it's like the damn ties kill you. So I'd rather just go for the win or not go for it at all. So I don't think it's going to hurt Reich at all. I don't think, like I said in the opening of the show, I don't think the Colts are a playoff team one way or another. I think the best thing they can do right now is stay healthy, keep Luck going, getting stronger, look if they can acquire anybody during the off season or during the season, if they can get hold of some running backs or some linemen, and then build toward a solid draft for the next year. I just think this is a write-off year for the Colts, and I thought it was a good gutsy call by Reich to do it, especially early in his career when he's not going to be in jeopardy of getting fired for making a move like that.
As a Colts fan, you should be super excited about Nyheim Hines. He's not your every down running back, but he's starting to develop a rapport with Andrew Luck on passing downs, and you can show because Nyheim Hines is converting touchdowns in back-to-back games now.
Yeah, the Colts they're young. I mean, they got a lot of work to do, a lot of stuff in front of them. They got a lot of parts they still need to fill in. And there's players that are coming up and playing and trying to create some kind of a winning culture, at least giving you the confidence that your coach is going to go for a win and try and win games rather than sit there and take a tie. I think it's all part of a process that is going to make the Colts better in 2 or 3 years. I don't think we'll see it for a couple, 3 years, but I think down the road, games like this and taking shots and things like this are going to pay dividends in the long run for the Colts.
Yeah, and I think, Anthony, when you look at it, Steve hit on it right there. You've got a young team that needs confidence. As a coach, he showed that confidence whether it worked or it didn't work. And, I mean, I just think that you never play for the tie. And I just think it's a shame that Reich gets destroyed while Vrabel, if Vrabel on that 4th down, they get stoned, right guard misses a block and they get sacked, or the running back gets tore up, then Vrabel and Reich are both idiots in the national media today. Anthony?
No, I agree with that, and I think that's part of our job is to be critical of the calls versus the calls that don't work. Yeah, it's a completely different conversation whether they work or not.
But the thing is this, it's not. Because it's easy for somebody to sit back and say, well, that didn't work, so that was stupid. That worked, so it wasn't. I mean, the play call, if Luck throws the ball a foot higher, it's caught, it's a first down. They call a timeout. They're one passing play away from putting Adam Vinatieri in position to win the game. The other thing I don't like is this. I think we're getting the ties because of the new sudden death rules and putting it to 10 minutes. And I would assume, Anthony, they're putting it at 10 minutes supposedly for player safety, correct?
Yeah, that's at least what they're telling us. But I'm a big fan of the way it used to be. Kick a field goal, the game's over.
Well, I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan that if you're going to say, once again, the NFL is for player safety, and that's why they shortened it to 10 minutes, then don't play games on Thursday night. Because there is nothing more against player safety than an NFL player playing on Sunday and then playing again on Thursday, Steve.
I agree entirely with that. That doesn't make any sense to me at all. You got guys that are, they historically teams take Mondays off anyway, or just go through films or don't do anything, give them a day off, and then they come back now after still banged up and bruised up, and the Colts are playing again against New England on Thursday night. So yeah, that is the silliest safety feature that the NFL really has out there right now, is to force these guys to come back 3 or 4 days without giving a chance to recoup some injuries, recoup some healing process, and stick them right back out there for another game, and then give them 10 days off after that. So, which kind of throws you out of sorts too. So, but that's where the big bucks come. Thursday night football is big money. So
$3 billion
deal. Stay there and happen.
Fox paid $3 billion for a 5-year deal to acquire Thursday night football.
There you go. And that pays for a lot of Roger Goodell's salary.
And another thing this does is this. It can change who wins a division. I mean, if you look at the Bengals and Ravens game, the Ravens had to travel. So the Ravens on Monday watch film. Tuesday they practice. Wednesday they practice. Wednesday night they travel. Thursday they got to play a game in Cincinnati, and they come out and they get behind 21 or 28 to nothing. I think it changes the game completely. I think the Bengals probably beat the Ravens anyways because I think they're a better team, but it's unfair to teams, and it skews competition. And if you're a team that has multiple games on prime time, I think it skews the competition. Let's go ahead and let's look at the Chicago Bears, because I know I catch a lot of crap because I think they could win the division. I don't think Mitchell Trubisky's as good as he was yesterday, but if he's half that good, Steve, the way the Packers and Vikings have played, you have to take the Bears seriously now.
I got to be one who's got to eat some crow on the Bears. I didn't think that they were a team with caliber capable of really being a force in the playoffs, but I think right now they're a contender for the division title right now. I mean, Minnesota's 2-2, and losing games that they should be winning or being better in, and Green Bay is, just like I said, Green Bay still in my eyes is one play away from being the worst team in that division. So the Bears are for real. I think that Trubisky's coming along fine. He's doing his job. He's either having a great year or he's turning into a great quarterback. And we won't know that till down the road. But defensively, the Bears are just a beast. Mac has just done the job there and gotten that defense just riled up, got them going. And I think the Bears are going to be a team that nobody wants to play the rest of the season.
Yeah, and when we look at it on the Tampa Bay side, obviously their defense is crap. And the reason they won a couple games is because they have to have a quarterback play like Ryan Fitzpatrick did the first few weeks, Anthony. And right now it brings up the question, if you're the coach, if you're Dirk Cutter, other than looking for houses in other venues because you're probably about to get fired, do you go with Jameis Winston or do you go with Ryan Fitzpatrick?
I think in terms of Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think the magic quickly burns out. And it showed against a real team like the Chicago Bears, one of the best defenses in the NFL coming in, and they took apart Ryan Fitzpatrick, who's been a career journeyman, and it exploited the fact that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're a one-dimensional team. There is no running game whatsoever, and a good defensive coordinator is going to shut that down. Now, if you're talking about putting Jameis Winston back in, I'm not the biggest Jameis Winston guy, but I do believe he's a more capable quarterback or starting quarterback in the NFL. So coming off the bye, when we see Jameis Winston, I think it's going to be the right move.
All right, Steve, do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think that their franchise is involved around Jameis Winston and not Ryan Fitzpatrick, and this is historically what Fitzpatrick does. You and I have had this conversation before, Mike, where he has these real high eyes like this, plays great, and then he just all of a sudden falls off the face of the earth, and he may be heading back toward that again. I agree. I don't think Jameis Winston is a bona fide superstar quarterback in the NFL. I don't think that the Buccaneers are a very good football team. But I think the best bet for them, for the entire package of presenting NFL football in Tampa Bay, Jameis Winston is their future for right now. They need to go back to him and win or lose with him, which is going to be about 50-50 probably because they have no running game and don't have much of a defense.
Yeah, I'd stay with Ryan Fitzpatrick, but that's just me. I just think Jameis Winston is, I think
Well,
he's a cancer. And Ryan Fitzpatrick has had better seasons than what Jameis Winston's had in his career. You look at him with the Jets a couple years ago, Anthony. I mean, he had a great season, had him at 10-6.
He did, but, Ryan Fitzpatrick's been in the league a long time, and you can't single out the few bright spots when there's been a hell of a lot more, dim spots.
Well, if it had been a hell of a lot more dim spots, he wouldn't have been in the NFL for over a decade either, though.
Yeah, and but he's an NFL number 2 quarterback.
Yeah. I'm just not a big Jameis Winston fan. I just don't see it with him.
I'm not a big Jameis Winston fan either, but I still think he's more capable of winning football games in 2018 than Ryan Fitzpatrick.
All right, I'll make this. If Jameis Winston was the starting quarterback all year, this team would be 0-4 right now. That's my point. I don't think they beat New Orleans in New Orleans. I don't think they'd have beat Philadelphia with Jameis Winston. I think Ryan Fitzpatrick is a tough guy. He may not be as talented as Jameis Winston, but he's smarter. He doesn't do as many stupid things. And yes, he's limited, but I find it hard to believe Jameis Winston would have went into New Orleans and won that game or beat Philadelphia at home.
Ryan Fitzpatrick, he's the type of quarterback that the team will rally around, but you can only will your team to so many wins in the NFL before you absolutely positively have to play the best player for the job.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'll take the guy that. So you think that the Bucs would have the same record if Winston would have started all 4 games?
No, I'll agree with you that they'd be 0-4, but I'm saying right now, going into their bye and coming out of it, Jameis Winston's the best guy for the job.
All right, we'll see. Next up, we've got the Earl Thomas injury. He also flipped a middle finger to the Seahawks sideline. Thomas has been sitting out some practices with what would be considered minor ailments. He explained that as he was investing in himself because the team didn't want to give him more financial security. He didn't show up to week 1 because of the ugly holdout that he had. What's your take on this, Steve? Does this prove Earl Thomas right?
I'm going to defer to you guys because I did not see this game. I didn't get any part of this game out here on the West Coast. So I didn't actually see what happened. I know he had a leg injury, was taking a locker room. I saw him flip it off, but I didn't get enough of it on Red Zone to know exactly what happened and why. So I'll let you two rocket surgeons debate this one out.
I was wanting to be a scientist. But, Anthony, what's your take on it? Does this prove Thomas right?
Yeah, I think for the players like Earl Thomas and Le'Veon Bell, the players that are holding out to get paid now, and then he goes and suffers a season-ending injury at the age of, he's 29 years old. This injury now could descale his pay grade moving forward.
You know it will. Miss an entire season, and then he goes to free agency.
So he's absolutely right to where the Seahawks should have paid him or traded him because now he's going to get a nice deal elsewhere because you can almost say his tenure in Seattle's over. Yeah, but I think for a player like Earl Thomas, who's never really had that big contract for a safety, he might not get it now. Yeah. He might not get that Eric Berry contract. And you could make the case that when the Chiefs paid Eric Berry, they were paying him for past production.
Yeah.
Because he hasn't done anything since.
No, and we don't know if Earl Thomas will ever be the same. And the thing that's the shame of it is I think if you named the top 10 or 20 players in Seattle Seahawks history, Earl Thomas would be on that list.
Absolutely. He played 6 seasons without missing a game.
Yeah, and they rewarded that by doing nothing. And there's a lot of fans out there that'll bitch and complain because he's a high-priced athlete. He was making millions, so he should have played. Why is it nobody ever bitches about the billionaire owners? Have you ever heard a fan just complain about a billionaire owner? Man, I had to pay $10 for a beer today. I had to pay $300 if I'm out of my network to watch my team play on the NFL Sunday ticket. Nobody ever says a damn thing about that. You know, they just
because
pick up the guys
people aren't betting on the owners. People aren't betting on, doesn't have owners on their fantasy football team.
Exactly.
That's exactly why. And I'm a fantasy football guy, but the truth's the truth.
Yeah. So that brings us to Le'Veon Bell. I think this makes it probably even more 100% sure that he's not going to be a Pittsburgh Steeler this year. And when we watched the Steelers play the Ravens last night, Anthony, there was no doubt that this team does not have the balance that it had when it had Bell. I mean, James Conner, I think, carried the ball for like 19 yards. And this team is now a game and a half, which is pretty much 2 games behind the Bengals and Ravens. And they've already lost to the Ravens at home. And if you look at their schedule, I think the Steelers team could only win 6 or 7 games at the most this year, the way they're set up without Le'Veon Bell right now.
I'm with you. I've been down on the Steelers basically since Le'Veon Bell was more focused on his contract than playing the Jacksonville Jaguars last year in the playoffs. And, we talked about this a little bit last week about Mike Tomlin. Does he have or does he not have control of the team? What is the Steelers' genetic makeup now without Le'Veon Bell? And now that Connor, who's been a hell of a story, he's a Disney story. That's great.
Yeah, but he's
in the
a
past
good
games,
running back. He's not Le'Veon Bell.
He's an average NFL running back. He's not an elite NFL running back like Le'Veon Bell. And Connor in 2 games averaged 2.1 yards per carry. In 2 out of the past 4 games, including last night, 2.1 yards per carry. That's not going to get the job done in the NFL.
Yeah, and Steve, when you look at this with Mike Tomlin, it looks like he's lost control of his team anyways. He lost the veteran leadership with James Harrison and them. Big Ben, I mean, he's Big Ben.
He can't make his throws.
Yeah, Big Ben is a good quarterback, but he's just good now. He's getting up there in age, and if you can't take the heat off with a little bit of a running game, he's a sitting duck back there anymore.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the thing about the Steelers is they're just aging. They're just a team who's cycling down from a good run, a good solid run for several years. But it seems to me that they're just aging, not gracefully at this point, across the board with pretty much anybody. And they're just cycling down and going to have to retool and rebuild. They're going to have to think about, how much longer do they invest into Roethlisberger? What do they do with Bell? Are they going to be able to keep their receivers and other people happy and keep the key young players that they have on that team happy? I just think it's a natural progression of all NFL teams. Eventually they cycle up, they cycle down. I think Steelers are just in a downward cycle right now, and I think they're going to pay the price for it for the next year or two until they make a move with Roethlisberger. Like you said, I think he's still statistically putting up big numbers, but how meaningful are the numbers that he's putting up? I mean, he's not really winning football games with the numbers that he's throwing up. He's throwing a lot of passes, getting a lot of yards.
Yeah, but when you give him no running game and no secondary, it's
hard
to win the game.
I know.
He's doing what he can.
Right, yeah. He's doing what he can, I know, but that obviously at 1 and 2 and 1, that's not enough.
Yeah, and the problem is with Ben Roethlisberger, he's going to be a hard guy to replace. So this could be more than a year or two of being down. And I don't think Mike Tomlin's a great coach. Let's face it. Tomlin won the Super Bowl with Cowher's guys a year or two after. I think the Steelers are in for a long winter's nap the way this is going. I mean, you look, Cincinnati's the youngest team in football. Baltimore's got John Harbaugh, who I think is one of the most underrated coaches in football. And the Cleveland Browns at some point will get somebody other than Hugh Jackson to be the head coach, and then they're going to be a factor.
Yeah, I just think the Steelers, like I said, it's just the Steelers need to start thinking about cleaning the house and retooling to a new version of the Steelers. I mean, it happens to all teams eventually. I mean, the Colts have bottomed out and they're down there. I mean, 5 years ago, Colts were looking at 13-0 and Super Bowl contenders 3 or 4 years in a row. Now, we piss away games by going for 4th and 9 and
it was 4th and
lose.
4. It was 4th and 4.
No, it was 4th and 9. They got a 5-yard penalty.
No,
it was 4th and 4 the first time.
They called timeout.
No, I thought they got a delay a game.
If you're the Steelers, do you and you go on a landslide, and let's say you finish with 6 wins, 6-10, do you consider blowing this up and beginning to rebuild and moving Bell and Antonio Brown. I know they signed him to a big contract, but they have Juju Smith-Schuster and James Washington, and just start to build a new team and start to move on from Big Ben and Antonio Brown, who you will still get some good draft stock in return.
Well, I think this. I think
you know,
if
the
you
problem,
look at them, their offensive line is really good. When it's healthy, it's really good. They've got weapons at receiver. I don't think you need to blow it up. I just think you need to get a young quarterback to groom. But you've got to draft better. I mean, they drafted guys like Bud Dupree, who is hot and cold. I mean, they nailed it on the Watt kid. But other than that, when you look at the secondary and the guys they've drafted, I mean, that's what's killed them. I mean, they were good in the 90s and the first decade of the 2000s because they drafted well. And the thing that's happened with this team is they have not drafted well, except for the Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell. If you look at them over the last 5 or 6 years, they've drafted a ton of defensive players that have not turned out to be what they were supposed to be. But, Steve, I know I interrupted you. Go ahead.
No. I right on the same lines. I think in answer to Anthony's question, do they blow it up? I think the problem here is the ego. The Steelers' ego is too big. They still think they're good. They still think they're an upper echelon football team. I think it starts with ownership, all the way down to Roethlisberger, all the way down to Tomlinson, all the way down to everybody in that franchise still thinks of the Steelers of 4 or 5 years ago when they used to beat up on people in that division left and right, and that division wasn't very strong. The division is gaining in strength tremendously, and they're not the big cat in that division. But I think their ego is going to hurt them for another year or two until they finally Roethlisberger just has to walk away from the game before they even go looking for another quarterback. I don't know. I don't know that they shouldn't have made a better effort to get Le'Veon Bell signed. I don't know the inner workings of that. I know he's probably making ridiculous demands, but you know, if there's a will, there's a way. You find a way to get this guy happy and get him back under contract. He's too important of a part of that offense and too important a part of that team to just cast him aside now. I heard now they're willing to take a decent player and a second-round draft pick for him.
Yeah.
That was the last thing I heard. I read on the wires where they'll entertain the thought. I'm thinking, okay, Colts, let's go get a running back for a year.
Yeah, but this is the thing. You're not going to get him for a year because he's going to want to be signed as soon as he gets there. He's going to want a long-term guaranteed contract. So it's not going to be the Colts get him for this year because he's obviously not going to play for this amount of money. So you're going to have to stick it out there.
I would guess as crappy as the Colts are, they've got a lot of salary cap money.
Yeah.
They sure can't be paying a lot of people too much money. They're one of the few teams that probably can afford to take him. And what a compliment he would be to Andrew Luck. They all you got to do is rebuild an offensive line and a defense. I mean, you've got a key cog. I mean, let's face it, Le'Veon Bell is still one of the premier running backs in the league. And, you know, if you can get your hands on him and tie him in there with an Andrew Luck, the Colts get good real quick.
Oh, yeah, the Colts would probably be 3-1 right now if they had Le'Veon Bell all year. Maybe 4-0.
You know, maybe 4-0, yeah. But there's a situation for a second-round pick and give him Jack Doyle, who cost us the other game. Hell, give him T.Y. Hilton.
Jack Doyle's my favorite Indianapolis Colt.
I
love Jack Doyle, too.
I do, too.
I like Jack Doyle. I like Jack Doyle.
The Bengals picked it up and ran it in for a touchdown. That was awesome.
I'm teasing. I like Jack Doyle.
I love Jack Doyle. He's one of the best players.
But
I think MVP the first week.
Just the entire Steelers organization just seems to have ego issues to me. Tomlinson prances around on the sideline like he has no fear at all of losing his job, or he doesn't think. It's like he looks incredulously like you're actually trying to beat us, rather than like, why are we not moving forward? Why are we not? What are we doing wrong here that I need to correct as a coach? I don't get that impression from him when I see a camera on him on the sidelines. It's like, we're okay, we're the Steelers, we're going to win, pull us out and win it. And now they're not pulling out and winning them anymore.
All right.
So I think you're going to see sweeping changes in that organization coming up one way or another over the next couple of years.
All right, let's move on to the Miami Dolphins, who entered yesterday at 3-0 in a 2-game lead over the New England Patriots. And they had a steak sitting right on the chest of the vampire, and they swung and they hit themselves in the foot. They got beat 38-7 by the New England Patriots. They didn't just get beat; they got dominated. They were down 31-0 at one point. The Patriots' defense, which is awful, basically held them to 7 points. And the thing that showed me more than anything, Anthony, wasn't that the Patriots are necessarily back, because I still think they have problems. It's the fact that the Miami Dolphins are nowhere near a playoff team.
No, and or at least coming into the game, I was high on the Miami Dolphins, but I thought this one could ultimately cause them trouble, and it did. And I am one who believes the Patriots might be hitting their normal stride coming out of the first month of the season. They'll be getting Julian Edelman back in Week 5 from his suspension. Their backfield looks like it's clearing up with rookie Sony Michel taking over as their top running back and James White assuming his normal role as the 2018 Kevin Falk. So I do believe in the Patriots, but the Dolphins, I don't think they're going to just fade away. I think they'll still be the second best team in the division. I think they still could challenge for a wild card spot.
That's only if their schedule's easy enough, like it was a couple of years ago, though. Steve, what's your take on the Dolphins and the Patriots?
I think the Patriots, they were 2-2 this time last year and ended up in the Super Bowl. I think as long as you have Belichick and Brady still working together on the field, I still think they're always going to be a threat. This is obviously not the same Patriots team that we've seen in the years past, and I think that the Dolphins are the worst 3-0 team in the history of NFL football.
And the thing with the Dolphins is this, though, Anthony. If they're going to contend, they're 3-1 right now. Their next game's against the Bengals, and the game after that's against the Bears. So I think there's a really good chance that they're 3-3 after 6 games.
3 real quick, right?
Yeah.
And looking downward.
Yeah.
Thank God they play the Jets twice.
Then you get the Dolphins, or you get the Lions, who they might be able to beat. Then you go to Houston, which is a probable loss. They got to go to Green Bay. They go to Indy, which may be a loss. They got to play the Patriots again. They got to go to Minnesota. They host Jacksonville. So I think this team is at best a 7 or 8 win team.
Yeah, see, I had them pegged for 8 or 9 wins, and 9-7 in the AFC could get the job done.
Yeah, I don't think it will anymore. And the reason I thought that too at one point, but if you look at it now, Kansas City, I think, is going to win 12, 13 games. Their schedule's not tough at the second half of the season. I think the Bengals and Ravens are teams that can win 10 to 12 games. So that takes up a wild card right there. The AFC South, I mean, Tennessee and Jacksonville could both be 10 or 11 win teams, if not more. I mean, because Tennessee looks pretty solid right now. I still question the offense. So I think it's possible you could slip into 6th seed at 9 wins. But I don't think the AFC looks as weak right now as it looked at the start of this season, Anthony.
No, and you're not even including the Chargers in that conversation. And they're a very hit-or-miss team. They need to get better on defense, and they need to get Melvin Gordon going on the ground a little bit because he's producing as a pass catcher, but he's not getting enough touches or carries to dominate a game as a running back. And the Chargers are going to eventually need to run the football and slow the game down.
Yeah, and that brings us to another team that can score some points, the Atlanta Falcons. 29 for 39, 419 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and Matt Ryan lost. 37-36. I think when you look at this, Anthony, the biggest thing this tells us is luck has a lot to do with how good a season you have. And by luck, I don't mean the way the ball bounces, but I mean the way injuries happen. And with the Falcons, they've lost 3 or 4 guys on their defense. And right now, they're to the point where they're just going to have to outscore everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And it almost looks like the Falcons are mimicking the Chargers because the Chargers are the team we're used to seeing these injuries, these significant injuries derail their season. And you can make the case that if the Falcons had the same defense in place that they had last year with this offense, because if you remember, their offense struggled last year, they'd be a favorite for the Super Bowl. They'd be a contender with the Rams right now. Yeah, if they had last year's defense with the way this offense is playing. Yeah. And mind you, this is without Devonta Freeman.
Yeah, and if you look at it, they lose in overtime to the Saints. They lose by a point to the Bengals. The one thing that sticks out to me here is the question is how real are the Bengals? And Andy Dalton, 29 for 41, 337 yards, 3 touchdowns. The thing that stands out most to me with the Bengals is this. Defensively, they're not playing well. But they get Vontaze Burfict back next week. And Joe Mixon looks like he'll be back next week. I think this is the best team in the AFC North, Steve.
No, I agree. Yeah, the Bengals are doing it consistently. They've got everything clicking. They're not winning with flukes. They're just winning with good, grinded-out football. Dalton's playing probably some of the best quarterbacking he's done that I've ever seen him play. As much as I follow the Bengals, he looks sharp. He looks crisp. He looks controlled, running the offense. I think the Bengals are for real, and they're a contender to go deep into the playoffs.
All right, Anthony, you're a fantasy football guy. You know, somebody got a good deal on Tyler Boyd.
God, I love Tyler Boyd. He's really coming into his own in the past 3 games. And even though he didn't get into the end zone last week or yesterday, he still scored, totaled 100 yards receiving. And to me, he's one of the premier slot receivers in the league right now. And now you have John Ross getting into the mix. I mean, this offense is explosive.
Yeah, they lost Tyler Eifert yesterday, though, which is a loss. Broke his ankle in the second quarter, I believe it was, after having a really good first half. And I know he's always hurt, but Tyler Eifert is a big loss for this team. But there's so many other weapons on this team right now.
Tyler Kroft is going to step in, and they won't miss a beat at tight end.
They will miss a beat, but they won't miss as much as a beat as people think. Because Tyler Eifert is he can stretch the field on a seam route. Tyler Kroft is going to run great inside routes. He's going to catch the ball. And the one thing he brings that Tyler Eifert doesn't as much is Tyler Kroft is a better blocker. And Kroft made some big plays last year.
I mean, he scored 7 touchdowns on 42 receptions.
Yeah, but
big red zone
really
talk.
Good in the red zone. Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Now we go to the Philadelphia Eagles. They're 2-2, Steve. Is it time for the Eagles to panic?
No, I don't think it's time to panic, but I think that you're seeing a lot of chinks in the armor of last year of this football team. I don't think that they're going to. I think right now I don't know that it would be in the top 3 in the NFL or the NFC in terms of football teams at this point in time. I mean, certainly you got the Rams who are just head and shoulders above everybody else. But I just think that they're winning in a very ugly way, in a very scary way, that games that could go either way. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the Wentz-Foles thing. I don't think so because Wentz doesn't look that bad. But
Wentz was 33 for 50 for 348 yards.
For 348 yards, yeah. Yeah, but I don't always put that on quarterbacks. I don't measure the success of a quarterback and what they're doing with the team just based on statistics because, I mean, you know, Luck threw for 464 yards and 4 TDs, and what happened? You know, they get beat.
He kept them in the game.
He kept them in the game, but that's okay. But I just think the Eagles don't have the same magic that they had last year. I think that they're probably living more off of last year in terms of reputation for them right now than they are as good a football team as they want to believe that they are. And I think they'll make the playoffs because it's a weak division. But I'm not sure in the end they're going to be a factor when it comes down to making a run for the Super Bowl again this year, not to defend.
All right, so what's your take on them, Anthony? I know you're a Cowboys fan. You're in that division. I agree with Steve. I think the Eagles will win the division almost by default.
Well, I like to think that if the Eagles keep losing games the way they are and you can keep the Cowboys in the conversation, it wouldn't surprise me if they eventually squeaked it out. But the Eagles are certainly not a 13, 14-win football team. You can make the case that they're a 9 or 10-win football team with the Cowboys. The Eagles' defense is not the same. They are just not the same defense as they were last year. They were a shutdown unit last year, and they're just not that. They're not getting the plays on special teams either. So a lot of it is going to fall on Carson Wentz's shoulders. And Jay Ajayi only had 15 rushing attempts. He converted 70 yards. But you need to get Jay Ajayi, who's a workhorse, over 20 touches a game.
Yeah, but still what I come back to with the Cowboys is Jason Garrett's the head coach. Next up, and I still think in the end that's going to be what bites you in the ass. Next up, the Cleveland Browns have figured out a new way to lose a game as they lose 45-42 in overtime. The Raiders, Derek Carr, Derek Carr played a great game, 35 for 58, 437 yards, 4 touchdowns. But in the end, it was a long drive at the end of the game, a converted 2-point conversion. They come down, they win the game. Is Hugh Jackson's job ever not safe, Steve?
The guy's been there 3 years, all right? I don't think he's in jeopardy. Yeah, I don't think he's in jeopardy. If you can withstand the fact of going 1-31 or whatever they were, and then doing what he's doing again this year, I don't know how you fire the guy. What are you firing for? Failure? Too many losses? I mean, what's the reason for termination on his exit interview? I don't know. I think he's maybe the safest coach in football right now.
Yeah, and
I'm saying that kind of facetiously because we wait every week. We sit there every week, go, okay, he's gone. Get a coach in there, and you've got a good football team. We're not the only idiots saying that, but I never hear a rumbling that his job is even in jeopardy. We went through Hard Knocks. There was no panic on him or his staff's mindset in going through Hard Knocks and watching their preseason camp on TV. I don't think the guy is any fear at all. I just don't think – I don't know. He's got the safest job in the NFL next to Sean McVay and the Rams for this year.
No, Marvin Lewis has the safest job.
There's another one is right in that same boat.
Well, and Mike Tomlin. It just seems like the AFC North, you get a lifetime contract when you get the job.
I think Tomlin's in trouble. I think Tomlin's going to be in trouble. I think Tomlin's going to have to – I think he's going to be in trouble by the end of the year.
Well, you know what, though? And Anthony, if you remember back, Bill Cowher had like a 5-11 and a 6-10 back-to-back. Everybody thought he was going to get fired. But the Steelers are really loyal to their coaches, which is why they've just had Chuck Noll since 1960. Since 1969, they've had 3 head coaches. They've had Chuck Noll, who, for my money, is one of the 3 greatest coaches that ever lived. Bill Cowher, and then Mike Tomlin. So he's probably safe. When I look at this, though, my question is Greg Williams. They gave up 45 points to the Oakland Raiders. Derek Carr throws for almost 500 yards. Marshawn Lynch runs for 130. He had 2 receivers well over 100 yards. Baker Mayfield played all right. There's enough talent here to win games. But
there was a blown call in that game yesterday in overtime.
Yeah.
With the overturned first down conversion, Carlos Hyde, when the Browns were driving. That game should have been over right then and there.
All right. Well, the game should have been right over when they gave the ball to the Raiders at like the 15 with like 2 or 3 minutes left, and they were up by 8 points. I am never going to blame an official's call for why a team loses a game because they gave up 45 points to lose this game. They blew a lead. They were up 17-14 at the half. They're up 28-21 at the end of 3. They got an 8-point lead with a minute or 2 left. So the fact is this. They should have finished the game before the official call could ever have anything to do with it. If you let a team stick around, you're kind of asking for stuff like this to happen.
Yeah, I got to say this about the Browns is that a year ago, they weren't even in the conversation of being a genuine NFL football team. I think now they're in the games, and I think for anybody to come in and think that Baker Mayfield is going to be the sole difference of this team turning into a playoff contending team, especially since this is his first game that he started. He's not even started the first 3 games of the season. I think it's ridiculous. They're in these games, and they're competing. They're playing. They're going down to the wire. These guys, and these are games that. They get better. They get smarter. They create their own opportunity. They don't get these bad breaks. They don't put themselves in a situation you just explained. And in a couple of years, the Browns, you may be looking at the Browns and hoping the Bengals can split with the Browns at some point in time. This is starting to be a nucleus of a good football team.
See, I don't buy
and maybe we're just over.
I don't buy that argument.
Well, I think they need to move coaches. I think they need to move their coaching, get some different coaching. You got to let Baker Mayfield develop. I think Baker Mayfield is a real deal. I think he's going to be a bona fide winning quarterback in the NFL. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning or a player of that caliber, but I think he's going to be a winning quarterback in the NFL, and he's going to lead his team. He's got good head on shoulders, appearing to be at this point in time. He's making rookie mistakes, but all rookies do. He's getting the snaps now. And I think in 2 years, the Browns are a team who are going to be talked about as they should win their division. As Pittsburgh has to retool, and the Bengals continue to believe in Marvin Lewis.
All right, I can give you this. I think last year at the same time, people said the same damn thing about the Browns. If you look at the Browns last year, they lose 21-18 in the last seconds to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They come out the next week, they're 10-10, end of the fourth quarter, the Ravens beat them 24-10. They go to Indianapolis, they lose 31-28. They played the Jets, they lost 17-14. Then the bottom dropped out. But when you look at them, you go later into that season, they lose a 3-point game to the Titans. They lose it by a touchdown to Detroit. They lose by a touchdown to Jacksonville. They lose by 9 to San Diego or L.A., whatever you call them now. They lost by 6 to the Packers. They lose by 4 to the Steelers again. So I don't think when you're losing you can think anything has changed. Because last year, I do think people at this point said they look more like an NFL team. They're in games. But the point is this. Teams that go 2-14 usually have 8 games they lose by a touchdown or less. The fact is this. They still are not winning. And I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong here, Anthony. But to me, this seems like the same story. They start off. They play close for 3 or 4 weeks. Everybody thinks, oh, this team's good. They're a lot better than what they were. But in the end, you either win or you lose. And they're still losing. And they're losing in the most absurd ways possible.
You know, I think the Cleveland Browns, they're a better team in terms of personnel, bringing in Jarvis Landry and Carlos Hyde and retaining Duke Johnson. They have the young pieces in place on the offense. It's the defense, aside from a few spots, that's a tremendous question mark. And a player like, I'm going to throw his name out there, we saw him all over Hard Knocks, was Carl Nassib. He was a playmaker, pass rusher, and they moved on from him. He didn't make the final roster, and now I believe he's making plays in Tampa Bay. Why is a player like Carl Nassib, why did they move on from him? He was one of their best pass rushers.
They don't know what they're doing. They kept a guy that was not half as accomplished as he was. And I'll tell you this, if the Browns are a better football team, they're going to win. And they're going to start to win now because they host Baltimore, which they really need to beat them so the Bengals can get a game up on the Ravens. But then they play the Chargers at home. And then I believe they go to Tampa Bay. And then they get Pittsburgh, at Pittsburgh. So I think this is a team that with the talent they have, if Hugh Jackson has any clue what he's doing, can actually go 3-1 in their next 4 games. If you got that, you got a real team. I think at least 2-2. You do that, then you got a team I think that's trending in the right direction. And I know what you're saying, Steve, because as Anthony said, they do have better players. But still in the end, until I see them finish these games that they should win, like New Orleans, like this game the past week, I'm still going to think it's the same old Browns until they show me different. Just like no matter how good the Cincinnati Bengals look in the regular season, until they win a playoff game, I'm going to think everything's still the same.
Yeah, now I wrote it down, but I don't know which one of you two rocket surgeons said it, but it was a poignant statement when you said they're losing games in absurd ways.
Me.
All right, if you're losing games in absurd ways, that means that absurdity is going to go away. It's not like you're losing games because you're inept.
See, I don't think so.
Absurd to me means
I think this.
Absurd means some things are happening to them and going against them that maybe isn't totally in their control. I do not think that the Browns are a playoff contending team. I think that they maybe will get 5 or 6 wins this year, but the team is going in the right direction. They still have work to do, They got to get their defense. They put a lot of stock and effort into Baker Mayfield. I think the guy is going to be a player in this league for a period of time. He's going to get better. They need to shore up their defense. They need to change their coaching staff. And then I think in 2, 3, 4 years, the Browns become a team that we're talking about in playoff contention, deep into the playoffs or making playoff moves as Mayfield matures and lead the team. Chubb's a good addition. He ran for 105 yards yesterday. They've seem to have fairly good balance. Jarvis Landry's a great receiver. They've got a lot of the offensive tools they need. They're putting up 43 points or 42 points, and they scored big against New Orleans too. They're weak defensively right now. They got work to do. They need to retool their coaching staff. More than anything, the Browns need to retool their coaching staff, and I think they will be competitive. They'll make that division harder to win because Pittsburgh's going to come down, Cincinnati's climbing, and Cleveland's going to come up too, and that's going to become the old black and blue division again, a kind of where you just pound everybody into the ground and they just beat each other up. So I think that more than not, the Browns are heading far in the right direction, more so than in the wrong direction.
Well,
it doesn't happen overnight.
I think when we talk about losing games absurdly, it's what they've done since 1990, whatever, probably since 1964, 65. And I think I just don't think there is a belief there when the games are close at the end that they're going to be able to make the play to win the game. And by absurd, I think that when you are so used to losing, winning's a habit, but so is losing. And I think right now losing's a habit there, which is why the coaching staff has to be changed. If you change that coaching staff, and I mean, I'm not talking about mid-season hiring Todd Haley or Greg Williams because I don't think they're the right answer either. I think you need a clean sweep. You need to bring somebody new in, somebody with a little energy, and change the culture. The culture has not been changed. We saw that when we watched Hard Knocks. And if the culture is not changed, the team will not change.
Did I not just say that?
No. You said that you think eventually they're going to get it right. I don't think they will.
Well, when they change their coaching staff, I said they need to retool their coaching staff and change their culture.
But what they're going to do is they're going to be 2-7.
Oh, and by the way, wait. Thank you for that Vince Lombardi moment. Winning is a habit. Way to go, Vince. Don't you like Bill Belichick better than Vince Lombardi? Shouldn't you be quoting Bill Belichick?
Actually,
quote Bill Belichick if you're going to talk about great football teams. He's your hero.
All right. Then shut up, Risley, because that's what Bill Belichick would say. Huh? What about that?
Yeah, okay. That's a good comeback. That's way.
Well, I gave you a little flashback to Bobby Knight screaming at you, too, didn't it?
Yeah, why don't you just flip me off as you're being carted off the field with your broken leg?
Actually, I probably would. There's nothing wrong with flipping people off when you break a leg because you got an excuse. You're in severe pain. You don't really know what you're doing. You're not thinking clearly. All right, guys, tonight, Monday Night Football, the undefeated Kansas City Chiefs take their high-powered offense in the road in prime time to take on the Denver Broncos at Mile High Stadium. I couldn't say that. All right. I would think the key to Kansas City winning this game with their offense and Patrick Mahomes, who has been hot, Anthony, is, as always, they need to continue to start hot and get an early lead because this Denver team has a defense that could cause them trouble. And Case Keenum, while not one of the top 10 quarterbacks in football, is a guy that can figure out a way to beat you at the end of games.
Yeah, I think this game tonight is going to be a lot closer than what people may think. I know the Chiefs have had this high-powered offense, but anytime you have a division matchup like this, I take it like the Steelers and Ravens. No matter how hot or cold a team is, these games are usually close, and that's what I expect.
Yeah, and I think when I look at this, I mean, Denver seemed to have found a hidden gem in undrafted rookie Philip Lindsay. And if you want to slow a team like Kansas City down, you need to rush the passer with your front four without having to blitz, which I think they can do with the Broncos. You got Von Miller up there, and if you can put pressure on him, and then when you get the ball, if you can control the clock with Philip Lindsay, I think Denver can win this game. Anthony?
No, I definitely agree. It's a home game for the Denver Broncos. They have two competent running backs. I forget to mention a Royce Freeman. So that's a competent two-headed rushing attack to slow the game down and take it out of Pat Mahomes' hands.
Yeah, and I think when you look at these teams, Steve, the big key to the Chiefs that I think everybody has ignored is, I mean, a game is 1/3 offense, 1/3 defense, 1/3 special teams. And the Chiefs' special teams may be the best in football right now. Who do you like in this game, Steve? Denver or Kansas City?
I'm going to tell you what, I'm going to go. I like the Broncos. I think defensively they're just solid. And, I mean, but I'm betting against the magic of Mahomes, that he can't keep it up this long. This is kind of a make-or-break deal for him. Not make or break. That's a really strong statement to make. I shouldn't say that. But I think this is his first really big test of what he's going to get a very tough defense against it. Denver's always a hostile crowd. The people there will be loud. You know, the altitude changes, whether that really affects anything or not. There's just factors working against it. And I just think Denver has more at play here than Kansas City does. So I'm looking for a pumped-up Broncos team to come out and pull it off, and Mahomes to finally have a human quarterbacking night, not a superhuman quarterbacking night. And I like the Broncos.
Yeah, I like the Broncos in the upset, too. I think Mahomes has looked great the first few games. Now there's a lot more film on him, though, Anthony. And when I look at this, it's his first Monday night game on the road in Denver, a hostile environment against a team that can run the ball, and the Chiefs' defense has been questionable at best this year.
Did I just say all that?
You didn't say it nearly as well, so be quiet and listen, Anthony.
I know you guys are picking the Denver Broncos, but I'm still going to stay with the Kansas City Chiefs. I think Andy Reid and the Chiefs' offense is too strong. I think eventually they'll take control of the game. But you mentioned special teams. Tyreek Hill had his coming out party in his rookie season with a rushing touchdown, a receiving touchdown, and a special teams touchdown in prime time against the Denver Broncos, and I think it was in Denver. So I think it's going to be a big Tyreek Hill game and a big Kareem Hunt game on the Kansas City Chiefs side, and I think Pat Mahomes will have very human numbers.
Yeah, but see, it would have been...
I guess it's a very fair statement, yeah.
It would have been really boring if we'd have just all picked the Chiefs, though.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I think it's very fair, Anthony. I mean, it's a pick'em game, but I think the crowd, the excitement, the first time on national TV Monday night. I think the fact that Mahomes has just been superhuman the first 3 weeks. I don't know, but you can't take away from Reid. That team has not hiccuped at all yet. And why would we think they're going to hiccup tonight? I think the Chiefs are for real. But I just think somehow the magic dust is going to fall in the Broncos' hands tonight. The Broncos are just a team that finds ways to – it's kind of that Elway culture. They find ways to win these games. Somehow they find ways to win these games. And as long as John Elway's there and part of that organization, that culture is always instilled into the Broncos. And I think they find a way to
I just hope the Broncos win.
I just do.
I hope the Chiefs never win a game. I think the Chiefs should be banned from the NFL for being assholes. There you go.
That's harsh.
I think this. They let Tyreek Hill play.
That's harsh.
They let Tyreek Hill play. Tyreek Hill should never be on an NFL football field.
I mean, you could make the case about, a quarter of the NFL right now.
No, you couldn't. Not compared to Tyreek Hill. I mean Tyreek
Joe
Hill,
Mixon.
Joe Mixon. Yeah, let's talk about Joe Mixon. Joe Mixon was 18 years old. If you watch the entire video, which I've seen courtesy of the University of Oklahoma Police Department, because I was going to write an article bitching about the Bengals picking him when they did. And when I talked to the University of Oklahoma campus police, they said you need to see this video before you write that article. And the video is for 25 minutes outside of that restaurant. This woman screaming, punching him in the back of the head, calling him the N-word, throwing stuff at him, and basically verbally abusing him completely. And he was 18 years old. He got mad, and he smacked her. Was he right? No. But he was 18 years old, and it's nothing like what Tyreek Hill did. I mean, Tyreek Hill pleaded guilty to a felony charge of strangulation for the mother of his child. Tyreek Hill should not be in the NFL. And the thing is this. My other case on that is Colin Kaepernick's not allowed in the NFL because he took a knee for the national anthem. Okay?
No.
This is the thing.
There's no law that says Kaepernick's not allowed in the NFL. There's just nobody that's interested in him.
But Hill, a 20-year-old star returner, a wide receiver at Oklahoma State, was at the apartment of his girlfriend, who was 8 weeks pregnant with their child, when she received a text message from someone saying that Hill had been hitting on high schoolers. According to the police report and court testimony, Hill threw her phone and laptop into the hallway, shut her out of her room. When she re-entered, he hit her in the face, choked her, and punched her in the stomach repeatedly. He put her in a headlock that put external pressure on her neck that compressed her airway, according to the statement in his guilty plea. Come on, guys. That's well beyond Joe Mixon. And I've got no problem with somebody screwing something up and getting a second chance. But I think some things just you can't really come back from. And I think beating a pregnant woman who's pregnant with your baby in the stomach and strangling her is pretty bad.
But isn't that up to the NFL to govern at this point?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's up to the Kansas City Chiefs to govern. I'm telling you this. If I'm coaching a professional football team, which I have, and I've had the situation where I've found out something about my player, I'm getting rid of him. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want somebody, and this is the thing. If Joe Mixon had done this stuff, I would never cheer for Joe Mixon. I mean, you're talking about strangling and punching a pregnant girlfriend in the stomach because you got a text message, or she got a text message from one of her friends saying that you were doing something that you probably obviously were doing, or you wouldn't have got that pissed off about. But sometimes I just like to get on my soapbox. I just think that there's some things that you should not be able to really recover from. I'm sorry. I mean, we had, London Fletcher, who played the Super Bowl after he killed a woman with a DUI. I got the right one there, don't I? I don't want to say the wrong name, but the L.A. Ram played in the Super Bowl.
Was it? I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's ringing the bell.
And, I mean, the thing is this. The thing that bothers me, and you talk about it again, it's the betting. Fans don't really care. Fans will say they care, but they only care if it's your team, not if it's their team.
Can we talk about the Ryder Cup?
No, we're good. What's a Ryder Cup? Is that a horse racing event?
No.
Well, who won the Ryder Cup?
I'm getting Europe.
Why would we want to talk about it if we lost it? That's like a German
Because
talking
we lost
about
it.
World War II. You just don't do it because you got your ass kicked.
All right. We'll save that for the golf show.
All right. Anthony, any final words from this monstrosity of a show?
I got a question for you guys.
Okay.
Who's in the biggest trouble right now? Anthony, who's in the? If looking at all the teams, who's in the biggest trouble right now? Their season's pretty much over.
Wow, there's a
Buffalo
few
After
of
4
them.
games into it.
Are you talking about like teams that we expected to be in the mix but aren't playing well, or just overall? Because there's a lot of teams that are in trouble who I don't see making a run at it. But I think the Atlanta Falcons, I think that as good as their offense is playing, they have no help on the other side. And the NFC is too good with teams on both sides of football.
Yeah, and they've only got 5 home games left, Anthony. I mean, they've lost back-to-back home games.
Right.
I think they opened at home. No, they didn't. They opened on the road. So they've already lost 2 home games, and that's a killer, especially for a dome team who, when you get to November or December, if you're going to New York or something, it usually doesn't work out that good for you. But
Mike, who do you think?
I don't know. I agreed with him,
Going
so I got to
Atlanta?
think of something else. I think the Green Bay Packers. I think the Green Bay Packers have problems. I mean, they're a one-man show in Aaron Rodgers, and I think the reason they got problems is because now the Bears with Khalil Mack, Jordan Howard, are a better football team than they are. The Minnesota Vikings are a better football team than what they are. And I think right now they're the third best team in that division, and they could have problems making the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep living on the fact that they're one play away. I still don't think that Rodgers' knee is as solid as they're letting on to believe. I think he's living on borrowed time.
No, even if it is, they're going to meet Khalil Mack again, and Khalil Mack can make the other knee go. He's a bad dude.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and things aren't all well and good between Aaron Rodgers and Mike McCarthy.
They shouldn't.
From what I'm seeing,
sure
Aaron
not,
Rodgers is keeps taking these passive-aggressive shots at the organization. He's not a happy camper.
How could you be? Mike McCarthy is a bigger joke than Marvin Lewis, and they keep him around for a decade. He did win the Super Bowl, but let's face it, they won the Super Bowl because they actually had some players around Aaron Rodgers and a defense at the time. And Aaron Rodgers hasn't had a defense in damn near a decade, has he?
No, not at all.
So what you're taking there is, because of Mike McCarthy, Aaron Rodgers probably has no shot to go down with Tom Brady and Joe Montana. Fair or unfair, it's just the way it is. But those guys were with great coaches. And Aaron Rodgers is with Mike McCarthy. But, all right, who's the biggest surprise team right now, Steve?
Oh, I'd have to say the Chiefs. I think what the Chiefs are doing, like they've been solid. They'll get a huge test tonight, obviously, and we've already talked about it. In fact, two of us will pick them not to win tonight. But they're the biggest surprise to me in terms of how they're winning football games and Mahone and how Reed has got that team cranking offensively and defensively, special teams. To me, they're the biggest surprise. Don't know if they'll have any impact in the playoffs or not, or how long that candle will stay lit. But right now, after week 4, or going into week 4, I would say they're my biggest surprise team.
All right, Anthony?
Seattle Seahawks. I thought the Seattle Seahawks were poised for regression, rebuilding. They keep losing star after star on the defensive side of the ball. Their running game's a question mark. They have no weapons for Russell Wilson on offensive line, but they keep winning games.
Yeah, but they're still.
And I think it's a testament to Pete Carroll.
Oh, it's not.
I mean, they're already halfway there.
No,
they already have 3 wins.
They're at 2 wins. They're 2-2.
Oh, 2-2.
They're 2-2.
Yeah. So, and you look at the teams they beat. I mean, I think it makes it a little rough to think too much. I mean, no offense to your Cowboys, but they beat the Cowboys. They beat the Cardinals. They lost a close one to the Broncos, close one there. But now your problem is you got the Rams are coming to town. The Chargers come in. The Packers come in. They go to the Rams. They go to Detroit, which I think Detroit, to me, is a surprise team because I didn't think they'd be this good, even though they're 1-3. They go to Carolina. They host Minnesota. So I still think they're 8-8 at best. And I don't think it's a testament to Pete Carroll. I think it's a testament to Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson is an elite quarterback that doesn't get the credit he deserves.
If they were playing in many other divisions, I would agree about an 8-8 team. But, aside from the Rams, you have legitimately 4 wins with the Cardinals and the 49ers now without Jimmy Garoppolo.
Yeah, but you still got to beat some other teams to get the 8 wins. And they've already beat the Cardinals once, so you only get 1 more there. I still think it's an 8-win team, and it's because of Russell Wilson. I think Russell Wilson's like Andrew Luck. Russell Wilson or Andrew Luck being on your team makes you a 7 to 8 win team automatically. You just got to put something around them. Where the best quarterbacks, Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers, usually they're good for 10 wins no matter what you put around them. But guys, we're going to go ahead and wrap this show up this week. We will be back next Monday with Anthony at the same time for a little Panic Monday in the NFL. Make sure you check out the Indiana Basketball Weekly Show with myself, Steve Risley, Colin Hartman, Wednesday night at 8 o'clock on thegruelingtruth.net. The NFL Pick'em Show tomorrow night at 9:30 Eastern Time, of course, on thegruelingtruth.net. So, We're going to go ahead and wrap it up. Remind you can hear all of our shows on Spotify, iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, Spreaker, Stitcher. Wherever you find sports podcasts, you'll find The Grueling Truth. So for Anthony Servino, Steve Risley, I'm Mike Goodpaster. You've been listening to The Grueling Truth, where the legends speak.